Oh, let's turn to page 790, and we'll have our responsive reading. 790 in the back of the hymnal. And if I remember right, I am to read the light print, and you guys are to read the dark print. At least that's what we'll do. See what love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is that it does not know Him. Everyone who commits sin is guilty of lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. You know that he appeared to take away sin, and in him there is no sin. He who commits sin is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. By this it may be seen who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not do right is not of God, nor is he who does not love his brother. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word. At this time, Jeff, you get to preach.
Happy Sabbath to you all. Welcome to our many visitors this morning. If it weren't for you, we would have very, very few people here. So thank you for being here. I wanted to reiterate what Carl was saying about camp meeting. It is really a blessing. This year was the first year that I was able to go for the whole week. And man, I wish I'd been going every year for the whole week. So I really encourage you to go. Make your reservations way in advance. You can also find some on Vrbo and Airbnb and all sorts of places. So there's lots of places to stay up there. Ted Stallard undoubtedly qualifies as one of the least that Jesus mentions in Matthew 25. Turned off by school, very sloppy in appearance, expressionless, unattractive. Even his teacher, Miss Thompson, enjoyed bearing down her red pen when she placed X's next to many of his wrong answers. If only she had studied his records more carefully. They read, first grade, Ted shows promise with his work and attitude, but has a poor home situation. Second grade, Ted could do better, but mother seriously ill, receives little help from home. Third grade, Ted is a good boy, but too serious. He's a slow learner. His mother died this year. Fourth grade, Ted is very slow, but well behaved. His father shows no interest whatsoever. Christmas arrived, and the children piled elaborately wrapped gifts on their teacher's desk. Ted brought one too. It was wrapped in brown paper, held together with Scotch tape. Miss Thompson opened each gift as the children crowded around to watch. Out of Ted's package fell a gaudy rhinestone bracelet with half the stones missing and a bottle of cheap perfume. The children began to snicker, but she silenced them by putting on the bracelet and splashing on some of the perfume. At the day's end, after the other children had left, Ted came by the teacher's desk and said, "Miss Thompson, you smell just like my mother." He left. Miss Thompson got down on her knees and asked God to forgive her and to change her heart and attitude. The next day, the children were greeted by a reformed teacher, one committed to loving each of them, especially Ted. So, how many of you can remember back to your middle school days? For some of us, me included, that was a long time ago. A couple of our kids in church are in middle school right now. Back in my day, you were made fun of if you didn't wear the right clothes, the right shoes, or if you had acne or braces, if you were overweight or too skinny, if you were poor, and the list goes on and on. And I think it's even harder on the kids today than it was in my day. Now, kids probably think that once you grow up, you grow out of this and you don't experience it anymore. Adults, is that true? No. Wrong. At work, you may think, wow, I don't fit in. Why is that person talking about me behind my back? You may experience someone who's jealous about your salary or your job, or just want your job. And they may even try to get you fired. As adults, we aren't judged by some of the petty stuff that the kids are, but now it's the bigger things. What kind of car do you drive? How big is your house? How expensive are your many toys? We say, I have this and you don't. I'm rich and you're not. I drive a fancy car and you don't. Friends, we're just a bunch of old middle schoolers. Now is where I start stepping on some toes. This doesn't happen in the church, does it? Oh boy. Did you see what that sister was wearing? I'm shocked. I can't believe they made her head deaconess. Have you tasted that communion bread that she makes? They made him elder again? He's not a good speaker. Don't tell anyone I said this, but the pastor isn't doing a good job. Don't get me started on that head elder. Seriously, I could do a better job than him. Why did they bring him in as a guest speaker? I don't like the way he preached. I don't like the way he sings. His music's too fast. And I think I might have heard some drums. You say he gave a great testimony that changed some people's lives. We're just a bunch of old middle schoolers. Lately, I've been thinking about why Jesus hasn't come to take us home. We know the time is near. I think if Ellen White were alive today, she would be shocked that we were still here, don't you? I would like to suggest to you today that Jesus has not come because we have a heart problem. And I'm not talking about the kind of heart problem that is caused by eating a lot of red meat and clogging our arteries. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked, it says in Jeremiah. Today we'll examine what the great physician has to say about our different heart problems and what the treatment is. So turn in your Bibles to the book of 1 John. Now, John came into a situation where people were trying to say that what it meant to be a Christian. They were going against what Christ has said. John was a passionate guy. Remember, he was one of the ones they called the son of thunder. In fact, if someone was going against Christ, he would say, "Bring down fire from heaven." But here, we find him later in life. Now let me pause for just a second and say this. The society we live in these days devalues two groups of people, young people and old people. We are not consumer enough. We cannot buy enough. We do not have value in a consumer society. The young are being told, "You're too young. You need to keep studying so that you can work, make money, and pour money into the economy." Then when you're old, you're told, "You're too old. You can't work anymore. So you know what we're going to do? Here's your retirement home to send you off to. We don't need you anymore." So we tell both sides, "You're too young. You're too old. You have no value. You're not worth it." Friends, don't listen to society. Each and every one of you is a child of God. He loves each and every one of you, and you have worth and value in the life and where you are right now. Don't let anyone tell you different. And that is what John is saying. He's opening up because he's at the latter years of his life. He's nearing the end. He's seen so much and gone through so much following Christ and walking beside him. He's writing to the churches that we'll later see in Revelation. He's in the midst of writing down the passion that has flowed from Christ through him and into the written word. His passion he's pouring out to us is, what does it mean to live for Jesus Christ? If there's one thing he wants you to know, is that Jesus is Christ. So what does it mean when you say, "I am a Christian"? What does it mean to you? Follower of Christ, right? What does it mean to follow Christ? Give up everything for him. So if we give up everything to follow Christ, what does that look like? Because that is the point I want us to learn today. There were people coming into the church saying that Jesus was not Christ. And John goes, "You are the Antichrist because Jesus is fully Christ." Now don't be confused. I'm not talking about the Antichrist in Revelation. I'm talking about people who are against Jesus. You can be an Antichrist because it's living against God. When you live against God, you become anti to him. As Christians, we are called to live fully in him in all that we do. So hopefully you still have 1 John. 1 John chapter 3, beginning in verse 10. 1 John 3:10 says, "In this the children of God and the children of the devil are manifest. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is he who does not love his brother. For this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that you should have love for one another." Righteousness and love. Righteousness means what? Right living? Living the right way? If you live the right way, you love. Because if you're living the right way, living for God, meaning you have opened the door of your heart where Jesus is knocking and invited him in to your heart, now you are living the right way. Jesus is living in you and through you, and he pours out from you. He wants so much to live inside you that you allow him to pour out his love and mercy to a world that so desperately needs it. John is saying all you need to do is live a life for God. And what does that look like? love. And in that love means this: love one another. Because we have people in the church asking, what does it mean to be a right living person? At this point in John's ministry, they were saying, I'm without sin. Flip back a couple chapters to 1 John 1:8. He addresses this. He says, if we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. You may know someone today who thinks he or she is without sin. Or they walk around acting like they are without sin. Do you do that? Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I grumble all the way to church. And then I put on the perfect elder appearance so that nobody knows that I'm a sinner. Just being real with you today. But I'm a sinner just like anybody else. Think any other people in our churches do that? You think maybe that's why many of our churches look the same? Because we're all doing the same sin? We all have that fake, perfect, self-righteous outward appearance. But we need to be real. God wants us to be real. Speaking of our churches, I don't know about you, but I love it when our church is diverse. We need all races, all cultures represented in our church. We need people from all walks of life. Last month, when our family traveled with Ethan's robotics team, we stayed in a fully diverse house with about 30 other people. And it was wonderful. And I'm not saying this to make myself sound better than anybody else. I'm saying this because I've seen people who act like if they get to heaven, they expect it to be full of people who are just like them. There's going to be people from all walks of life. If we can't get along, if we can't love them here on earth, will we get a chance to love them in heaven? Maybe we go back to thinking that if we make God in our image, then we will be like God. Instead of if we become made in God's image, we will be able to see the world like He sees it and love others like He loves them. In some of our churches, we may have people who hate someone because they're a different race, or they hate someone because they're from a different culture. Oh, they may never outwardly say it, that they hate someone, but their actions speak louder than words. Anti-Christ. And I don't think we speak out against it enough in our churches. There is no place for that in our church because it tarnishes the image of God. When people walk out in hate, they walk out against God and not fully in Him. If we let this happen, then who does it mean that we are connected to? Go back to 1 John chapter 3. When we read from there, we read that we should love one another. We pick up in verse 12. Not as Cain, who was of the wicked one, and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his works were evil and his brother's righteous. So let's turn back to Genesis chapter 4 and take a look at this story briefly. I know we're all familiar with the story of Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel do a sacrifice to God. Now what we're going to look at is concerning worship. We always hear, be in the world, but not of the world, right? Have you ever known any Adventists who were running away from the world? They run to places like Andrews in Michigan or Collegedale in Tennessee, places that are rural and far away from the world. We're not in the world because we ran away from it. Be in the world, but not of the world. Rabbis used to say if there are 10 hypocrites in the world, 9 of them reside in Jerusalem. If there are 10 hypocrites in the world today, 9 of them reside in the church. And I'm probably one of them. Don't look to me as someone you want to say that's the way you should live. There is only one that you should look to. What happens when you go into worship in the wrong mindset? Genesis 4, we'll start in the middle of verse 2. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Now we see some very important things in this. It says Cain brought what? Offerings of the fruit of the ground. But Abel brought the firstborn of his flock and their fat. He brought the best that he had. Why do you think it says the fat? Because that's a prized part of the sheep, right? Abel brought the most prized thing that he had as an offering. Not just something that he said, this will do. I'll take that to God. Cain brings some fruit from the ground. Some of it may have been rotting. Some of it may have been buggy. No, these are good enough. I'll just take those to God. God looks down and he sees the heart of what we do. He sees what you do from the heart. Do not think, I got cleaned up, I showered good, I got my nice clean church clothes on, I'm good and clean. I'm good. Don't think that makes you clean. It does not. Your heart has to be clean and cleansed by God in order for him to live in it. And he's the only one that can do it. And you look at him and say, God, I'm not worthy. Please turn me around. And God says, finally, we can get something done. He puts you on a journey, and he keeps you there, and he loves you for it. It's okay if you have problems. We all have problems. I have lots of problems. But what I think we have to take from this is when you come to worship, if your heart isn't ready to accept God, you need to rethink things. Look what happened to Cain. He was very angry and his countenance fell. Look around. Do you see any smiles? How will people know that you're a Christian if you go out with your countenance fallen? Oh, did you just go to church? Are they going to ask that? If you're... Do you realize that when you walk outside, what you look like matters? If God is living inside you, why do you look like that when you walk out? Get out there and live and smile. Show that God is living in you. When you see someone who is smiling, it brings joy into your heart. When your countenance falls, you completely change. You lose your perspective on who you are and who God is. Cain's countenance falls as soon as he hears this from God. But instead of saying, God, I'm sorry, he gets angry. don't you think God would have said, "It's okay, Cain, I forgive you"? Because he does not leave us nor forsake us. He is a loving God. But his countenance falls and he stops looking at God. And the Lord said in verse 6, "So the Lord said to him, 'Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it.'" Sin's desire is for you and you. Your countenance falls, sin is at the door. Does Cain walk away at this point? No, he doesn't. Ellen White says, sin is crouching like a demon, ready to pounce on those opening that door. Cain continues down. And as soon as you start a journey away from God, as soon as he heard, "What I gave you, God, was not accepted," he felt he was rejected by God. But God doesn't reject you. He still loves you. But what are you bringing to him to show him honor and glory? But instead you feel rejected. You decide, okay, you know what? I'll show you. I'm now in charge. Verse 8 says, "Now Cain talked with Abel and his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him." You know that "rose up" is the same words later used to describe Jesus. It's used to indicate putting yourself in God's position. And what did he do? Some translations say he slay Abel. What does the word slay mean? It means to sacrifice. He's saying, okay, God, you want a sacrifice? I'll give you a sacrifice. Here's my brother. Take him. You liked his sacrifice and thought it was worthy? Now here he is. We fall into the trap of anger, bitterness, revenge, and when we allow that to sit there and we stand at that door, we do not walk away, when we do not look up to God, when we continue to look down, when we continue to look at and hate at each other, we walk down the same path of getting ready to murder. You might say, I haven't murdered anybody lately. Good. But last time I checked, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount said, "Love one another as I have loved you. No greater love has any man." And he said this, "If you are going to be my disciple, I give you a new law, that you love one another as I have loved you." And then in Matthew 5:21, he lays it out. "You have heard that it was said of those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment.' But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment." When he says brother here, is he just talking about your sibling? No. He's talking about our friends, neighbors, co-workers, stranger in the street, even our enemy. Remember later in chapter 5, he tells us, yes, we have to love our enemies. So who has anger today? You don't have to raise your hands. I know that I've had some anger. And it's a hard path to walk down. Have you ever had someone you didn't like? Someone who had done something against you? we start plotting and scheming to get him back. It starts to consume us. It will eat us up. Meanwhile, that person goes on with life and seems happy. And what's happening to us? We're dying inside. And slowly we lose ourselves. Slowly we lose who God wants us to be. And we walk the path of death and not of life. But the beauty is that God will never give up on us, no matter where we are. If you look further down in the story, you know what God does for Cain? Cain was scared for his life because of what he did. But God tells him he'll protect him. Because he loves us no matter what. You are loved. John wants you to know this so badly. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Reach out to God. He didn't come into this world to condemn you, but to save you. When you feel that anger coming up in your life, don't open that door. Walk away, look up, and love out. Open the door of your heart to Jesus instead. He's standing there and knocking for you. Do this, and he will work in you. He will give you a passion for loving each other and everyone else that you come in contact with. And he will give you a passion for loving him. So now I'm going to suggest the hardest thing for you to do. Give up on your dreams. Now hear me out. I'm reading a book right now written by David Brooks. It's called The Second Mountain. In this book, he speaks about how when people are just getting started, they focus on themselves, their jobs, getting married, acquiring wealth, acquiring material things, houses, cars, making themselves as important and accepted as possible, reaching all their dreams. It is my mountain and I'm building something great. But as life goes on, you begin to realize that you're still not happy. Most of our dreams won't make us happy. You may go through a divorce, lose a job, or have a health crisis. Whatever it is, or maybe nothing at all, you realize none of the stuff on the first mountain makes you happy. You end up going down into the valley of life. You're searching for what's missing. That's when many find their second mountain. That's when you start to realize that your family, your kids, your loved ones all mean more than all that stuff on the first mountain. You begin to see that things are bigger than you. When you find a love that's outside of yourself, everything that you've built up for yourself goes away. When you look for God, your life has full meaning. Not because of what you have done, but because of who He made you to be in Him. So today, live it. Go outside and be a Christian. Because He goes on to say, if you're a Christian, you're going to walk in the light and you're going to have life. If you do not and you follow the other path, you're going to have death. And the last time I checked, this is not a funeral service, friends. Well, it is a funeral service if you're willing to say, I will die to self daily so that He can live in me. So when you walk out of here, it is not you, it is Him. So be a Christian, not a seventh-day Christian, but a 7 days Christian, so that people can see it in everything you do during the week. Don't have your countenance fallen, looking all defeated and sad. How about you get out there and serve someone, love someone, change your community, reach across the aisle, help someone who's hurting, because everybody is hurting, friends. They're just not willing to admit it. Find someone today and love them. Let Jesus live in your heart and flow out from you. Be Christ-like, because that's what he has called you to be. Do you want to know what happened to Ted? His teacher had a heart procedure done by Jesus, remember? She was a changed person. Christ started living in her heart. Well, Ted began to show great improvement. He actually caught up with most of the students and passed a few. Time came and went. Miss Thompson hadn't heard from Ted in years. Then one day he received this note. Dear Miss Thompson, I wanted you to be the first to know I will be graduating second in my class. Love, Ted. 4 years later, another note arrived. Dear Miss Thompson, they just told me I will be graduating first in my class. I wanted you to be the first to know. The university has not been easy, but I liked it. Love, Ted. And then 4 years after that, dear Miss Thompson, as of today, I am Theodore Stallard, MD. How about that? I want you to be the first to know. I am getting married next month, the 27th to be exact. And I want you to come sit where my mother would have sat. Miss Thompson attended that wedding and sat where Ted's mother would have sat. The compassion she had shown entitled her to that privilege. Let's start having some courage and start giving to the one of the least. He or she may become a Ted. Even if that doesn't happen, we will have been faithful to the one who has always treated us as unworthy as we are, like very special people. Never forget how much God loves you. Friends, let Jesus live in your heart and let it show as the love flows from you. If we would only start doing this, I believe Jesus would be able to come and take us home.